everybody, this is the Marine. If you enjoy backpacking, camping, or spending time in the great outdoors just like I do, or you may be just starting out and you're interested in a stove that's very lightweight, it's easy to use, it's reliable, quiet, odorless, requires no maintenance, uses fuel that's available most anywhere, it's easily transportable, it's safe, low cost, eco-friendly, and if you're into DIY, which is do-it-yourself, these stoves are fairly easy to make. In this video, we're going to look at what an alcohol stove is, how it works and how to use it, and the types of fuel that you can use in an alcohol stove. Now, by definition, an alcohol stove is a stove that uses alcohol as a fuel source. More than 20 commercially produced stoves exist, and you won't find them in outdoor stores. They're made by tiny companies called the cottage industries, and these people make them out of the garage or small shop, and you cannot buy them at the store, of course, so you have to purchase them online. Alternatively, you can make your own, but plans are available online for converting aluminum cans, tins, or other products into your next ultralight cooking companion. Now, there's 4 types of alcohol stoves. There's the open vented chimney, there's the open flame, which is very simple, there's the open jet, and also the pressurized jet. Now, an alcohol stove is just basically a beverage or a pop can that's entirely made out of aluminum to create a portable ultralight stove, leading itself to countless variations. Because of its portability and ultralight weight, makes this my favorite type of stove. It fits in my cook kit nicely and efficiently. It's basically to boil water for food and beverage. There are stoves that need a pot stand, and there's those that have a built-in pot stand. I mostly prefer the stove with the built-in pot stand, basically because I don't have to bring a pot stand, which is bulky, a little more weight. And if you don't mind carrying a pot stand, there are some pretty cool small stoves like the Mini Bowl design Mini Atomic. Some stoves will have a primer wick made out of fiberglass attached to it, which will help heat up the stove and the fuel, causing the fuel to increase its vapor pressure. Now, another piece of gear that you can make is just taking a piece of tin foil, folding it over and putting it on the ground and putting your stove on there, which makes it more efficient and also friendly for the environment. You fold it up into a 4-inch square. You set your stove on top. You can squirt fuel on the tin foil, and this will help prime the stove, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And the tin foil will also protect the ground from catching on fire, and it reflects heat up to the cooking pot to boil water faster. Plus, it can help make a level surface. Now let's look at how the alcohol stove works and how to use it. First, you take out your little homemade aluminum ground cloth. You set it on a flat and level ground, or you can also use carbon felt. Take your alcohol stove, and if you have a primer wick, then you soak around the fiberglass wick. Now, another way to prime your stove if you don't have a priming wick is to put your stove on a piece of foil, pour fuel around the bottom of your stove on the foil. Do not let any of the fuel get on the ground. Now it's time to add fuel to your alcohol stove. A pressurized jet alcohol stove will have a hole on the top with a thumb screw to seal the stove. Unscrew the thumb screw and pour in the fuel in that little hole. Then screw the thumb screw back on. And for other types of stove, just pour the fuel right inside. Now, the amount or measurement that is needed is a simple formula. 1 ounce, which is 28 millimeters, generally is enough to boil 2 cups, which is 16 ounces, or half a liter of water. Now, if you just need to boil 1 cup, which is a quarter liter, then you'll need a half an ounce or 14 milliliters of fuel. Now, to measure your fuel, you can use these small fuel cups. Some of them come with the stove. Otherwise, you can buy them online or you can get them at a pharmacy. Now, the way I like to measure my fuel is by marking 1 ounce or 28 milliliter lines on the different size bottles that I store my fuel. This way I can put the right measurement of fuel into my stove. You'd want a bottle with a flip-up nozzle. This system makes carrying and adding fuel into the stove very fast. Now, with the right amount of fuel in your stove, now it's time to light it. To light the stove, you can either light the priming wick, or you can put the fuel around the bottom of the stove, then light to prime the stove. Or you can just light the stove from inside. Wait for the flame to blossom or peak, or just wait for the flame to appear out of the jets, which are the small little holes on the side near the top. Once the flame is at its peak, then you can set the pot on top. There are some stoves like the Fancy Feast, you can light them with the pot on them. Now, if there's a breeze or even the slightest, you'll need a windscreen. There's different types of materials that you can use for a windscreen, like tin, aluminum, titanium, carbon felt. It also acts as a radiation shield, reflecting heat back at your stove and pot. Now, just wait a few minutes for the water to boil. Now, when the flame goes out of the stove, wait a few minutes before you pick it up to let it cool down. Now, one thing I'd like to add, when you go to light your priming wick and the flame goes out before the stove lights, what you want to do is let the stove cool down, squirt fuel around the priming wick again, light it, and I guarantee this time the stove will light. Now, let's look at the most common stove fuels and where you're more likely to find them. The first one we're going to look at is denatured alcohol, which is the most popular fuel for an alcohol stove. It's quite cheap. You can find them in most hardware stores. It's mostly made of ethanol and has some methyl alcohol added, which makes it unfit for human consumption. And it has a rating of 9,000 BTUs. Now, the second type of stove fuel we're going to look at is pure ethanol. It's more expensive than denatured alcohol, and you can find it in a liquor store under the names of Graves Grain, Grain Alcohol, or Everclear, and that's some of the brand names. It is a fuel choice if toxicity or environmental friendliness is on the top of your concerns. Now, the third type of stove fuel we're going to look at is pure methanol, also known as wood alcohol, and you can find this in most hardware store. It has a relatively high vapor pressure compared to ethanol and isopropanol, which means that the stove will achieve full power more quickly, would boil water and cook faster. However, pure methanol is very toxic and it can be absorbed through the skin, so you have to be very careful with this type of fuel. And it's over 8,000 BTUs. Now, the fourth type of stove fuel we're going to look at is rubbing alcohol, which is mostly made of 70% of isopropanol and 30% of water, and you can find it in all the drugstores. But having 30% of its volume non-combustible doesn't make it the most efficient fuel. But if you can find 99% isopropyl, then you would have a great fuel and it would have a rating of 12,000 BTUs. Now, the last type of stove fuel we're going to look at is fuel line antifreeze, which is usually pure isopropanol or pure methanol. And you can find these in hardware stores, convenience stores, and most department stores, especially up north. Now, a popular brand is Heat. The yellow bottle is pure methanol and the red bottle is pure isopropanol. Isopropanol burns with a yellow sooty flame. Now, my favorite type of stove fuel is the Heat, the yellow bottle. And that's because it's readily available anywhere. And if you're a thru hiker, you can always find it while you're hiking on the trail. Now, there's two cons with this type of fuel. The first one, the flame is almost invisible. So when you light the stove, you can't see the flame, and you go to light it again and you can get burnt. So what you want to do is put your hand over the stove and feel the heat before you even try to light it again to see if it's lit. Now, the second con, like I said before, it's toxic both to you and to the environment. But if you handle it carefully, it shouldn't be a problem. So let me share with you how I handle this fuel. I really like storing and carrying my fuel in these two plastic bottles that I showed you earlier. I like to use the 8-ounce bottles for the longer trip and the 4-ounce bottle for a shorter trip. I really like the flip-up nozzle so you can pinpoint the fuel to where you need it, not on your hands or the ground. Now, I bought these from Arrowhead Equipment, and they have different sizes, anywhere from 1-ounce bottles all the way up to a 16-ounce bottle. I believe these bottles are the lightest way to carry fuel, and you can carry exactly what you need, not carrying extra fuel that you are not going to use. I believe this is the safest and most efficient way to carry alcohol for the stove. Now, a big misconception is people say you cannot take these alcohol stoves down to extreme cold weather temperature, but that's absolutely not true. I have taken these stoves down to 30 below zero, which is negative 34 Celsius. So what you want to do is get a shirt or jacket with the chest pocket, and you get a 1 ounce bottle, and you put it in a baggie, secure it, put it in your chest pocket, and this will keep the fuel nice and warm, so when you go to start in the extreme cold temperatures, it starts really quickly, and you can cook your food and boil water efficiently. Well, I hope you found this video to be helpful and insightful, and if you have any questions or comments, please write them down below. I'd love to hear from you. This is the Marine. Thank you for watching, and God bless.